Hi everyone and welcome, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to make a Salamango. It's pretty much an easier version of the Dragonache that I made in a previous video. As you can see in the video, Salamangos have lights on their chests and tails. I'm going to see if it's possible to felt a glow-in-the-dark effect on the Salamango I'm going to make today. So for the base, take a polystyrene egg and cover it in core wool. Here I'm using a felting machine. It helps speed up the process of the felting. The base should be felted into a rough egg shape. Insert a short doweling stick into the top of the egg. This will help support the neck and the head. If it's a bit long, just snip a bit off. Put a bit of glue around the doweling and then just pop on the head. Now add some core wool around the neck area. This will shape the body and the head together. The base of the tail is copper wire with pipe cleaner wrapped around it. Wrap some core wool around it and place it into the base of the model. For the front legs we need to felt two skinny sausage shapes. Round off one end but keep the other end unfelted. This is so we can felt the leg into the body easily later. If the leg is looking a bit misshapen, just wrap some core wool around it to smooth it out a bit. So that's the front legs. Now we just need to wrap some red wool around them. It's best to add thin layers of coloured wool. This is to make sure the leg won't turn out too thick, and also it'll just be a waste of wool. For the back legs, just simply make some shorter, fatter sausage shapes. And with the back legs now complete, we'll felt all the legs onto the model. Add some core wool around each leg. This will help to keep the leg in place and give the model a little more shape. I've also added some core wool around the base of the tail just to thicken it out a bit. Now we'll start shaping the tail. The end of the tail is quite thick, so add a thick layer of core wool around it. So with the main base done, we can now add some colour. First I'll add a layer of white wool onto the front of the chest. But what about the glow effect, I hear you ask? Well, all in good time. Wrap some white wool around the thick part of the tail. Felt the white wool onto the tail and felt it into a sort of a sausage shape. However, the shape essentially that we want is a chili pepper shape. With your chili pepper shaped tail now complete, we will now felt on a layer of deep red wool onto the base of the Salamango. The head is a similar shape to a shark's head, so keep the snout nice and pointed. Don't felt the red wool into the mouth, however make sure there is a smooth line around the edges. Now felt some pink wool into a thin tongue-like shape. Felt 2 of these. This is to make a smooth layer for the inside of the mouth. 1 layer for the bottom of the mouth and the other layer for the top. Felt mainly around the edges to keep the mouth nice and smooth. Don't forget to felt the back of the mouth. With the main colour base now complete, we can now start adding the patterns, and we'll start by wrapping some orange wool around the head. Felt an orange strip onto the jaw as well. Now felt 3 orange stripes down the back. Add another orange stripe on top of the belly. Now we need to make 3 thick orange bands around the tail. To make the tip of the tail, you'll need to felt the wool into a cone-like shape. A 4th orange band is added over the top of where the red and white wool meet. This is also longer than the other bands running down the tail. Add 2 more orange bands over the red part of the tail. Now for the 2 bands around each leg, take 2 strips of orange wool and pin them into place. This will stop the bands from moving around when you felt them. Just remove the pins when the bands are nearly complete. I'd say it's looking pretty good so far. Now we need to add the more intricate patterns on top of the stripes. Roll some thin strips of red wool between your fingers and felt them on top of the orange stripes. Roll some small balls of wool between your fingers. These will make the dots on the end of each red stripe. Do the same pattern on top of the orange stripe along the belly. Felt small orange dots on top of the red dots. I thought it would be worth mentioning that I often return to certain areas just to refelt them and make the wool a bit smoother. Obviously I don't film these bits because otherwise it'd make the video too long and boring. Okay, so that's the patterns on the body all finished. Now we need to do the patterns on the tail. On the first 2 orange bands on the tail, add 1 long thin strip of wool onto the top and 1 onto the bottom. We're looking to make a narrow, curved, zigzag sort of pattern. As you can see on the image, curve out the bottom of each line. This will give the orange part the curved zigzag pattern that we're after. This pattern was very fiddly and was probably the longest part of the Salamango to make. On the tip of each line, felt on a red dot. Then add a small orange dot on top of each red dot. Felting the pattern onto the tail this way is a lot easier than felting on a long squiggly line. Now we need to make the same pattern again on the second band along the tail. The third band along has a similar pattern, but luckily this one isn't as fiddly as the other two. Add a thin line of red wool along the last 3 bands running down the tail. I'm going to use some pins to mark out where I want each dot on each line to go. I can then take out the pins if they're too close to each other. This saves me from guessing where to place each dot. Yep, you've guessed it, add an orange dot on top of each red dot. For the eyes, score on an eye socket onto each side of the head where you want the eyes to go. Felt a white disc and see if it's big enough to be placed into the eye socket. Felt a small blue disc on top of the white for the iris, and a smaller black disc on top of the blue for the pupil. Felt a small white dot for the shine of the eye. Try to felt around the edges of the eye as much as possible, so you won't get too many needle holes in the eye. Then take a thin strip of orange wool and felt it around the eye. This makes the eye look more inserted into the head of the Salamango. Okay, so I know you've all been waiting patiently, so here's what I used to make the glow-in-the-dark effect. Yep, just some simple embroidery thread. Trim off some very tiny pieces off the end of the thread and cut it all up in a small tub. This does take a lot of patience. I'm going to use this stuff from my local craft shop. It says on the bottle it's for wet felting, but it does mention needle felting. Follow the instructions and dilute it into a spray bottle, and spray it onto the white chest of your Salamango. It doesn't need to be soaking wet, just damp. Now start adding the embroidery fluff to the chest. Every now and again just spray some more solution onto the chest, just to help it stick on a little better. You'll also need to felt on a very thin layer of wool on top of the embroidery fluff, otherwise it won't stay in place. Do exactly the same on the white parts of the tail as well. To give the chest a warm glow effect when it's on display in the light, I'm going to felt around the edges of the chest 2 light shades of yellow wool. The darker shade along the edges of the red wool and the lighter shade in the middle. The white chest looks like an inner layer, so to make the red wool more like an outer layer, I'm going to roll up some red wool and felt it around the white area of the chest. Then take a thin layer of red wool. This will blend in the red roll with the rest of the chest. The red edge appears to be shaped like lava or magma, so I'll felt on some red squares on top of the white layer just to give it a more jaggedy look. I am aware that there's glow-in-the-dark felting materials available on such sites such as Etsy. However, they are very expensive, and when you include shipping, it makes it even more expensive. Whilst the embroidery fluff isn't exactly the most practical thing to use for glow-in-the-dark felting, it is certainly a lot cheaper than other materials available. Use the same 2 yellow shades of wool to highlight the tail. The Salamango has some red dots around its red chest. I originally thought these dots were placed randomly around the chest. However, when I looked again, it does turn out they are placed in a certain pattern. I felted some light red wool on top of the edges of the dark red wool. just to give the edges more highlight and make it look like it's lit up. I've also added a bit of light red to the red dots as well. Okay, time to see if this glow in the dark effect has worked. Yep, it might be a little bit hard to see, but it's definitely worked. For best results, it's best to charge the embroidery fluff with a torch or some natural light. You can also just see the tail has also worked as well. Okay, and now it's time for some glamour shots. I would use this technique again just to cover small areas of models that I make. I don't think it'd work very well using it on a large area of a model. Either way, I think he's turned out pretty well. Okay, so that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to see me make any more Viva Piñata needle felted sculptures, just let me know in the comments. Or anything else in particular, I'm always up for a challenge. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video.